Let's go!
What group do you think, position group, needs the fastest acceleration between now and the start of the season?
Well, I mean, if I had to point to one.
Boom! I'm looking at you. Yes, you. Okay. SEC Media Days is here. It's the official start to the season. A lot of people say that, but as many of you know, SEC Media Days happens every year. A lot of you know the format, and ironically, LSU was the first team to go through the car wash, and that included not only Brian Kelly, but three players, Jack Besh, BJ Ojolari, and Mike Jones. And that question to me is what stood out the most throughout SEC Media Days today. Now, what's really interesting is that the focus of SEC Media Days, for the most part, has been name, image, and likeness, and there was a big discussion about LSU's collective today at SEC Media Days. I'm actually going to save that conversation for Tuesday night's live stream because I feel as if that is a better live open discussion with you guys. Now, for me, I want to focus in on the answer to Brian Kelly's question, but the first thing I want to do is actually bring up a very impressive clip from my guy T-Bob hanging out with Mike Denbrock.
Verse, over the years, how has your philosophy developed in terms of, okay, this is what I know I want to do versus this is what I believe my personnel is capable of doing? Like, how do you manage that kind of push and pull?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with a philosophy, whatever your philosophy happens to be. And I'm kind of built, from the offensive line out, and it kind of starts there. I think that sort of physical toughness and the game being played there at a very high level is really, really important.
So before we get to Brian Kelly's answer on the position group, and I think you guys know where this is headed, the position group that Brian Kelly thinks he needs to see the biggest improvement from now until the start, I want you to really think about the question that T-Bob asked Mike Denbrock. He said, hey, what is the one thing that you need to do as a play caller when it comes to matching your philosophy with your personnel? And actually, this was something that we discussed in our last live stream. Shout out to you, Van, when he super chatted a question about tight ends, which of course is Mike Denbrock's actual position group that he coaches on LSU, along with being the offensive coordinator. But you notice before he answered the question about personnel, Mike Denbrock brought up the one personnel grouping that never changes, which is the offensive line. In today's video, we are going to focus on the one position that never changes when it comes to personnel groupings in the game of football. So, before we get to that, and as you see, this actually isn't a photo of T-Bob. We'll get to this young man in just a second. Let's actually hear the full question and answer with Brian Kelly at SEC Media Days.
What group do you think, position group, needs the fastest acceleration between now and the start of the season?
Well, I mean, if I had to point to one, I've pointed to the offensive line. We've got to bring that group together. I believe that the success of our football team will start and end with the offensive line and our ability to control the line of scrimmage.
Let's go! So, that shouldn't surprise anybody. A lot of coaches say that the battle of the line of scrimmage is the most important thing in the game of football. We can discuss that even deeper. My thoughts, you got to win the explosive play battle, the turnover battle. There's all these different, cliches that are out there. But the truth is, yes, the offensive line desperately needs to take a huge step forward, especially considering that they lost so much talent from last year. And today, we're actually going to talk about the position, to me, that has the most question marks. Because overall, we know more than likely Will Campbell will start at left tackle. I do believe the two transfers will start at the guard positions. Tremont Shorts at left guard, Miles Frazier at right guard, and more than likely Cam Myers going to start at right tackle. But I want to focus today on center. And it's ironic that T-Bob Hebert was the one that actually asked the question to Mike Denbrock, because we're actually going to bring up T-Bob in just a second. So you're looking at the photo right here of the profile of P.J. Lonergan, okay? He was the starting center for LSU in 2011 and 2012, okay? Now, what I want you to do is try your best. I want to see if you're watching this on a premiere, if you're just watching this now, who was the starting center after P.J. Lonergan, okay? I'm going to let you sit and try and think of it, and before you actually come up with that answer, don't forget to check out our PHL Patreon page where Danny, she is our resident offensive line expert in there. You know you want to join our PHL Discord chatter. All you got to do is check it out. Link is in the description down below. So the answer is Elliot Porter was the next starting center at LSU all the way up until, I believe, 2014. Now, do you think you know who the next starting center was at LSU? We'll reveal the answer in 3, 2, 1. Boom! It was Ethan Posick, who I would consider the best center at LSU. Obviously, a really talented, highly rated top 100 recruit. I believe he was the second highest rated recruit in that class with Tre'Davious White. Obviously, still in the NFL and was a phenomenal center. I think his last year as a starter, he was ranked the best center in the SEC by Pro Football Focus. Now, the next center was also a really good player at LSU. His name, Will Clapp, in 2017. Now, obviously, he didn't begin his career at center. He also played right guard. But Will Clapp was the next center, and I think you guys know who the final two centers were. A lot of you would argue that Lloyd Cushenberry was the best center, obviously the center of the greatest LSU offense of all time, also the recipient of the number 18 uniform, and Liam Shanahan, the starting center of, the last two seasons. So, what does this video actually mean? Well, as many of you know, Liam Shanahan started at center these last 2 years amidst a lot of controversy. Nothing really off the field, but actually just based on his on-field performance. A lot of you weren't on fire about Liam Shanahan last year or even the year before. And I'm going to do what I have done consistently on this channel, which is defend Liam Shanahan. There is someone that actually is to blame for the center position, and it's not Brad Davis, okay? I feel like this is going to be his first full year as the offensive line coach, and remember, the offensive line was already set in place when he took over, and that was already a very experienced group. So this is, especially now with Brian Kelly alongside him, this is going to be his first full year getting to form an offensive line in his own image. And the reason why I'm going to defend Liam Shanahan is that this is a guy who transferred from the Ivy League to SEC play when his entire career he only played right guard and right tackle versus Ivy League competition, and then had to play in an SEC full of odd fronts, which means a lot of nose guards are going to be lined up directly over you. And LSU thought that that was a good strategy, and they rolled with this strategy for 2 consecutive years. And the person I'd have to blame for that is Ed Orgeron. And this is why. It's not just because Liam Shanahan struggled. It was that there wasn't a backup plan. So Liam Shanahan, I think he played every single possible snap outside of a few, maybe in garbage time. I believe last year in some mop-up duty, Charles Turner did get some snaps at center versus, I believe, McNeese State. But the truth is, Liam Shanahan held a position where he struggled mightily from wire to wire. Why was there not another plan in place for somebody else to at least try center? Because Liam did have some really rough patches. And I think for Brian Kelly, if he did actually go back and watch all of the film of last year's LSU team, there was only 2 positions where LSU consistently was dominant on the offensive line, and that was left guard with Ed Ingram, and even Ed Ingram had some rough patches, and at right tackle, Austin Deculus. Those 2 guys, for the most part, though, were studs from start to finish. The issue was that left tackle, and a lot of that was Dale Rosenthal, wasn't really all that great. Right guard was very inconsistent with Chasen Hines, and then really center was a big inconsistency for LSU. Now, what's very interesting is before Liam Shanahan got there, Joseph Evans and Chasen Hines were battling for the starting center role. The fact that you never even tried that was baffling to me. So the issue for me is it's not who will start at center for LSU next year. It's who is the backup going to be? Because there is a higher likelihood than we would like to admit that whoever LSU rolls out there at center, maybe it be Charles Turner, maybe it be, it's been rumored that Garrett Dellinger has been floated around as a potential starting center, and a potential Marlon Martinez opportunity at starting center could be there for him next year. No matter what, no matter who it is, make sure you have a backup plan. And this is where it gets really spicy as well. I don't think that backup plan could be Fitzgerald West, the true freshman out of LCA. I like him a lot. A lot of 3-stars at LSU have turned out to be really, really good centers. In fact, most of the ones you just saw a minute ago, Lonergan was a 3-star, Elliott Porter was a 3-star, Cushenberry was a 3-star. They've had a lot of 3-star centers turn out to be really good players. It's not that I don't think Fitzgerald West can be good. I think he can be really, really good. It's the issue that all those centers we just mentioned all redshirted as freshmen before they ever became even a backup center. In fact, a lot of those guys were year 3 starters and above. So, that first year of seasoning is very important at a very difficult position. We've mostly focused on the offensive line, or we mostly focused just on one position. And obviously, Mike Denbrock and Brian Kelly have talked about the entire offensive line. But the thing about center is it is the most unique position on the offensive line, considering that you do touch the ball on every play. But it's also a position where you're never taken out of the game under any circumstances, right? You're going to have a center out there on every single play. That position doesn't necessarily need to be a miraculously amazing next world. In other words, you don't need the best center of all time at LSU, a Kevin Mawai type of player there. You just don't. You just need consistency there. And quite frankly, LSU just didn't have that. And this is why I'm going to bring back my buddy T-Bob back into it. What made T-Bob so valuable is that he was a good backup at all the positions, right? The thing about all those centers we mentioned a minute ago was LSU never really did need a backup because those guys never missed time. Out of any offensive position LSU's had, especially on the offensive line, center has been the most consistent when it's come to health. They haven't had the need to put too many backups in. The difference, though, is even in those cases, LSU always had a really, really good backup center. So, for instance, when Elliott Porter got hurt for a little bit, they did have Ethan Posick to back him up. And there were a lot of other backups mixed in there as well. So, you always got to have depth. A guy like T-Bob was so valuable because you knew if Lonergan went out, T-Bob was going to step right in and vice versa. So it gets into depth, it gets into all those different things. But the bottom line is right now, whoever the center is going to be, we just honestly, we just don't know. And because there is so much uncertainty, it makes it even more important that LSU has a backup plan ready to go. Boom! Hope you enjoyed this video today because, once again, depth on the offensive line is very, very, very important. A lot of you know that. And, this was kind of a fun video. Kind of fun to not talk about recruiting. Good stuff from SEC Media Days. I watched a lot of the interviews. Shout out to Jack BJ and who? Who was that? Bad joke. Come on. But, yeah, it was good, and I can't wait for the season. Let's go. Actual football is around the corner. So subscribe, ring the bell. Make sure you don't miss out on any of this content. I'm wearing this hat. Mike, one of our patrons, sent this to me because Danny said she didn't like that my Liverpool hat didn't match, the purple thing, but I'm wearing a blue shirt. Whatever. It is Power Hour LSU. Boom! Tonight, Fajitas Part 2. Let's go.